In high school coaching, a lot of the good stories come after the game. Sit back, watch, and listen to the journeys to the sideline and the stories of high school coaches. After the Game, presented by Baker Sports and High School 912.
Welcome to After the Game. I'm your host, Josh Baker, along today with our special guest, Coach Randalyn Bryant from West Nassau Softball. Coach, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, congratulations. You are our first female coach on the show. So we started the podcast with football coaches, and it took off a little bit. So we decided to, spread it out amongst other high school sports. So you are our first female coach on the show.
I'm honored. Thank you.
And I thought it was a perfect fit, right? Jacksonville girl, born and raised in Jacksonville, played in Jacksonville, played college in Jacksonville, and still coaching in Jacksonville. So I wanted to kind of share your story and kind of some feedback from you on what you've seen and how things have gone over the years. So let's start early, right? Yeah,
let's go early.
We'll go early.
It's a long time ago now.
So daughter of, I called them the Jacksonville softball couple. The power couple, your parents, Larry and Vicki Rogers.
Yes.
So I'm assuming softball was part of the deal, right?
Yes, played my whole life. We started later in life. Now they start these kids like 3 and 4. I think I was like 6 or 7. But
right.
Yep, the T-ball route up through, and then we were actually one of the first travel ball associations. Like we started First Coast Fire. Like there was only like 2 or 3 travel ball teams.
Yeah.
When I started playing, so out of First Coast, we did the First Coast Fire, which is still around.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was travel ball, and then.
So were your parents already in softball before you were born, or did they get into the game?
No, my mom was like a big time softball player. She played for Doug Harmon, so like UNF. Yeah, so they traveled and played slow pitch for him. Dad helped coach, and Dad had played some baseball and stuff, and he says he was good, but anyway. So they had traveled and played she played all over the place. Like she actually played against Dot Richardson. There was like a video, and we didn't realize it till we saw it like later that, the Olympian, she had played against her when Dot was young and started playing fast pitch. It was slow pitch and then went into fast pitch. So they had always, and I say that, I'm going to give Dad credit. He won a national championship in slow pitch with Publix.
Okay. As a player or coach?
As a player. I believe.
Gotcha.
He may correct me, but I'm pretty sure he was young enough to be a player then. So he does a little bit of both, like the player-coach thing.
Yeah, he still thinks he can play and coaches.
Yeah, he thinks he's still got it.
There's a rumor he still coaches from the stands.
Yeah, next to the on-deck circle at any West Nassau softball game. If Florida's not playing, Larry Rogers will be there coaching him up, even though it's against his rules to talk to anybody in the on-deck circle. Right. He doesn't follow the same rules.
Him.
Yes, correct.
I got you. So how early on do you remember, like, all right, I love this game. This is what I want to do. I want to play at high school or the college level. How? I
don't know that I had a decision.
Right.
So it's kind of like, the way I treat my kid now, that we don't really have an option. So, no, I mean, I think I was good at it, so it was fun, and I was always around it. I remember being, like, super young, us going to camps up in Tipton, and I'm like, I want to play. And I was probably 10, and these are high school kids, and he's like, go to right field. So I'd go out to right field, and he's like praying they don't hit the ball out there.
Right.
But, I mean, I had always, like I said, they started at First Coast in 1990 when it opened. They had coached long before that, but that's when I remember, because I was 5, 6 running around when they built that school, and I went through each and every one of them all the way through there till 2002.
And that was about the time they started the Fire, right? First Coast Fire was when...
We had started as the Gatorettes, and the reason we were named the Gatorettes is because the guy at Coleman's had some shirts that were like messed up or something, and he's like, I can give you these shirts, like, whatever. So we started as the Gatorettes, and then we went into First Coast Fire, and I was probably 10 and under.
Okay.
10 because I moved up to 12 with them, so I assume it was about when I was like 10 and under age.
Yeah, okay.
So.
All right, so it was obviously a given that you were going to First Coast High School and you were going to play for your parents. So how was that? I've got a daughter that'll be 12 next week, and I see her and her mother, the older she gets, how they interact, and have seen friends. So how was that dynamic?
It was not good. No, it was good until it wasn't. It's funny because anybody knows mom and dad. Like, mom's like the loud, like yelling one, and dad's kind of the little more like quieter one, but like he gets on you. He just does it not as loud as Vicky Rogers does. And unfortunately, I have that part of Vicky Rogers in me, so I'm very loud. But he, there was a few like rounds. I remember he took my car away one time because like I didn't do a drill right. I was like 16 and he took my car away and I was like, Mom, teach it. Like, I'm just going to ride to school with her. Like, what do you harm? Like, now I don't have to pay for gas money. And then he like kept it even longer. And I think he got in trouble one time. The umpire said, I've never heard somebody talk to a kid like that. My dad was like, well, that's my kid.
That's
so
my kid. Leave him alone.
Mind your business.
Right. This has nothing to do with softball. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, he used to get all over me. But I mean.
Now, did you ever use it against him? Like, hey, I'm just going to quit. I don't want to play no more. I don't want to play.
I'm sure I've said it, like, but it didn't last very long. And I don't know that I really don't remember having an option, and not in a bad way, but I mean, that's just what I did. And it was like, and I look back now and I'm kind of the opposite. Like when I don't like force my kids to do stuff. And I'm like, I'm glad he did force me. And he used to always tell me, like, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it. Like, you're not going to be the best and you're going to regret it. And I kind of, when I got to college, was like, oh, like, this is what he's talking about.
What he meant.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The bigger picture.
Yeah. I don't like to give him too much credit that he was right. So we got just a little bit of credit.
Gotcha. All right. So playing for them in high school, I mean, really good program at the time, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, we had won, I think we had won 12, it was either 12 or 13 straight district championships and, made the regional playoffs. And I never went to state with them. They went in the years before me, a little bit before me, slow pitch, fast pitch kind of thing. But we never made it out of like the regional finals or anything. But I mean, we were highly successful. I mean, it was the program to beat for sure.
Yeah. All right. So after high school, right? It's time to go play college ball. You're obviously good enough. How was that decision? What was the process like back then?
That was another fight as far as I had like verbally committed to the University of Florida. So Prissy Walden Clayman, who's now helping the Episcopal, was there. She had played for my parents, but she was playing at Florida. And I had gone to Florida camps, since they started. I think it was like 97. I was at every Florida camp there ever was. And the previous coach had recruited me, Larry Ray. And so when they had changed coaches, it was kind of, and I'm like, this is where I want to be. Like, whatever, I'll take books. Like, I'll take whatever. This is where I want to be. Right. So that was the plan. And then I just remember Prissy was miserable, like speaking for her. But she was just like, it's just kind of different. Like, I'm ready to be done. And like the coach and I had kind of gone to a camp and I'd gotten hurt at a camp and she I just didn't really appreciate like the way she had handled me, like when I was hurt there. She didn't handle me the way that I would have liked to be handled, not coddled, but like I was legit hurt and she kind of acted like I was faking it. So I was kind of on a rough thing there. And so then UNF at the time, Sydney Hutchkins that had pitched at Clay was at UNF and she decided not to come back. And so basically they had an open scholarship. And they were like, are you interested? And I was like, yeah. So I stayed home, closer to home, and went to UNF. And my dad was not happy with that decision because, they're diehard Gators. Right. Oh, but at the end of the day, I'm, the one that had to get out of the bed and go do it every day. Right. And I wanted to go somewhere I could compete and be happy and kind of do all those things. So I chose to stay at UNF. Right.
Well, and it was time to forge your own path at that point. Yeah. Who was coaching at UNF at the time?
Sonia Wilmuth was there.
Okay.
Yes, Sonia was there. And it was one of probably the best decisions of my life. As far as, I still have the girls that are my best friends now from UNF. We have this swoop troop that we see each other every year. Very good friends. And I loved it. Like there's not a minute of, it's just in general, the UNF softball. There was rough days, but just my whole experience at UNF was like was fun. It was good. So for the most part, for 99% of my career at UNF, it was a good time.
Now, how was playing for Sonia different than playing from your parents? Because I assume it's probably the first time maybe a couple First Coast Fire teams or whatever, but the first time you really played away from them.
Yeah, it was one of the only ones. I had one, I had moved to a travel ball team out of Gainesville Gold, because when I was supposed to go to Florida, there was several of us. So I had moved and started playing at Gainesville Gold. And that was, I had played for them. But Sonia, she definitely, I think just the college experience in general was a little different. And, anybody that's played there, and I always tell my kids now that are there, I'm like, it's rough when you get there. Like, they make you feel like, why'd you even recruit me? Like, you're doing everything wrong. And so we kind of had that, the same way, like not butted heads, but Sonia and I were kind of, and then it finally like calmed down and panned out. But I think anybody has to be easier than playing for Larry and Vicky Rogers when you're their kid. Like there's,
Right.
I mean, I was set up for that. Like it wasn't a problem. But it was definitely, it's different. Like there's a different level of expectations and everybody's good. It's not, you're not the queen anymore or the leader. Like everybody's good
Not
or
a
better.
big fish, small pond. now.
Yeah.
You're-
And that's like the biggest slap in the face, I think, is when you get to college is, you're so used to
Everybody's
playing. Yes. And being, above average on there. And then you get to that team and you're average.
Yeah. So where along this process did you decide that you wanted to coach?
Well, my mom taught for, I think, 36 years and coached. And my nanny was actually a teacher too. So I, of course, went into the education field. And I think it just kind of goes with it, and I honestly, and this is probably, I don't say not politically correct to say, but I probably wouldn't teach if you didn't have the coaching aspect. Like the reason I'm there, and I think a lot of people, I don't think it's just me, they just don't say it. I would probably not teach.
Right.
I may go try to make a little more money somewhere, but I do it for the softball and I do it for the coaching. And I just kind of fell into it real young. I got hired when I was 21.
Yeah, as a head coach.
Yes. So, yes, when I originally started at Yulee, I was fresh out of college. I was doing my internship, and it was the second year they were open, and they needed a softball coach. And so a former guy that had his daughter had played at First Coast, he was at Yulee, and he called, and he was like, this is, who you need. And granted, I will tell you, I know they hired me because they thought they were getting Larry and Vicky too? Yes. So they kind of... It was a package deal.
Part of the package.
Yeah, to start. Like, is he coming? Are they coming with you? So, they did help me for a few years at Yulee. And then my mom helped me for a little bit, like when I had moved to West Nassau. But, they literally, I was 21 and they hired me to.
Let's talk about that job for a second, because I don't think people, obviously me being a Nassau County guy, I understand that was not an easy job. When you took it. You're taking a newer school in the same county as local powerhouse on 15 miles away, whatever it is, to Callahan, and Fernandina had just been okay, a good team every now and then, but not softball wasn't that important on that side of the county. So you kind of had to build a softball culture, right?
Yes, and they had the one coach, because like I said, it was the second year, and we weren't great, but we weren't terrible. We were somewhat competitive, and I will lend that to with the help of my dad. You know what I mean? As far as he's like, this is basically what you need to be competitive. Like, you just need somebody to throw strikes, mix it a little bit, like play defense. And so we did okay. You know what I mean? It wasn't great, but it's funny because, like you said, the powerhouse, and the powerhouse was the West Nassau. So it was definitely a difference. It was kind of one of those to get, and we were competitive with them. Like when I, coached at West Nassau, we were competitive with West Nassau. So it was hard to get started because that's not like something that was, I want to say it wasn't huge. Like they had a Little League and stuff, but like I have such a feeder program in Callahan. It wasn't the biggest like feeder program, and it was new. And again, like I'm not easy to play for. Like anybody that's played for me will tell you. So when you come in and like these are the expectations, and like I expect this, and this, it was kind of like I don't what like right. I thought we were playing for fun, and I was like, no, we're
and probably fresh out of college. You had more of a college mentality.
Yes,
like, this is what we do. This is how we handle ourselves, and we're going to get after it.
Yeah.
Whereas you're coaching a bunch of girls that had played Little League and then middle school, and that was kind of the extent for a lot of them their experience.
Yeah, when
right?
they're like, I'm not going to be able to be there on Tuesday, and I'm like, that doesn't work for me.
Right.
Like if we have practice on Tuesday, you're here on Tuesday. You know what I mean? Would you play today if it was a game? And they're like, yeah, then I'll see you at practice. Right. You know what I mean? If it's something important enough that you would miss for a game, then do what you have to do. But if it's, the mentality is like practice is important as a game. Like we're not doing this part-time, like full-time or not at all. Mm-hmm. So
I know the answer to this question because I've asked you before, but how did Larry and Vicky react to being assistant coaches?
It didn't go well. Mom's fine because she was used to being the assistant. My dad and I got in, not an argument, but it was like over fall ball or something. I had to move. We were playing somewhere and I had to move somebody up. They didn't have enough players, and he's very adamant about you play your age. Like, that's why there's age brackets. Like, you play where you belong. You know, you don't move up and this and that. And I think unbeknownst to me at the time, he had already kind of said, like, we're not moving people around. Like, we're playing, like, ages or whatever. And so they came and they're like, you know, we really need a catcher. Like, it was like a fall ball tournament thing. It wasn't a big, huge deal, but it was definitely actually, I say that now. I think it happened. This was my first year at West Nassau that he, you know, didn't agree with me moving somebody around, and he let me know real quick that he was not happy about my decision. But at Yulee, like, you know, I really pretty much, I don't want to say I let him run the show, but I still, like, I've never been, even now, like one of those that's like, I'm not going to big league you, or I'm not going to think like I know more than you. Like, I'll learn from anybody.
This is my program.
Yeah, no. And so, I mean, there was kind of some things like I am now, like, as far as like, this is my head on the chopping block. Like, it's my name behind it. Like, we have reputation, but like back then, I wasn't, and like I said, I'm not stupid. Like, I know when they hired me, you know, part of the deal was I was getting Larry and Vicky along with it.
And a teacher. Larry and Vicky, and you were going to teach.
Yeah, and I was a good PE teacher. I still am. But no, so, you know, we did butt heads, and it's kind of funny. So Mike Kelly, that's like long time, had helped me. And obviously very talented softball family. I wish she'd have had a few more girls. I'm out of Kelly's now. But he is kind of there, and Mike was kind of always, you know, like, this is going to be interesting because here they are, like, this relationship we had is like daughter, coach and player and stuff. And he's like, this is going to get interesting. But like, we held it together at Yulee. I think he didn't really get on to me ever until we got to West Nassau. Yeah. And he was like, this isn't how you do things. This isn't how this works. So he quickly put me back in line.
Gotcha. So how many years were you at Yulee?
Technically 1.5.
Okay.
2. Yeah, I ended the Yulee thing not on a good note. But, you know, one of those things that everything happens for a reason.
Right.
I ended up initially, I guess, where I wanted to be.
Right.
So it worked out for me.
So second job in Callahan at West Nassau, a program that's, you know, has some history, you know, been pretty successful as far as, you know, local softball teams. And here you are now at how old were you?
When was I there? 22, 23, like 20. I was 24, I think, when I started at West Nassau.
Gotcha. So, you know, all right. So we're a couple years out of college. We've, you know, had our own experience. Now we're starting to develop who we are as a coach, right? What was different the second time around?
I think,
for you?
Well, I obviously inherited a better softball team. I won't tell you as far as competitive and that kind of stuff, but as far as the game of softball when I got there, but it, you know, it was hard. You know, I came in behind Chris Hicken, who's now coaching at Yulee. We kind of swapped places.
Coached me, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah, as a freshman. At
Yes,
West Nassau.
He's old. Chris Hicken is old.
Hall of Famer now.
Yes, he is, as you are. We got Hall of Famer at West Nassau and
right.
Hall of Famer Chris Hicken. So, you know, they had things kind of a certain way, and, you know, and you had some older kids that were like, you know, well, it's been this way and it's been that way. So they always say it takes 3 years to build a culture. So when I first came in, you know, I mean, and anybody that can tell you that played for my parents and stuff, like, they were very strict, but it's like a family, like, I still to this day am the family kind of stuff, but like, I have rules, like, and I expect you to follow the rules, and I expect you to conduct yourself a certain way. And the kids, we talked about it the other night, because I got on, I'm like, I will get beat 100-0 before I put up with your nonsense. Like, just remember that. And they all know the saying. If you played for me, like, you ask them what's the saying, they'll tell you she'll get beat 100-0 before she puts up with your nonsense. And so, like, I'm still that way. So when I first got there, it was definitely like, you know, well, we normally do it this way. And like I said, it was so rich in tradition. Like, it wasn't when I got to Yulee and it was brand new and there wasn't anything. Like, there was so many, like, traditions, and they had been so good for so long, and, you know, played in so many state tournaments, and in slow pitch won state championships. And, like, softball was just so big and rich, and it still is in Callahan. So when I came in, it was definitely kind of have to make a name for myself and have to sort of forge my own way. So, you know, I mean, there was a few that, like, I butted heads with, I guess just parents that were accustomed to, like, certain things, and,
right.
you know, and
how
so
it had been done.
Yeah. And so I just remember, Coach LaTroy Strong, that was at West Nassau doing basketball then. He basically told me, he's like, it takes 3 years to build a culture. Like, it's going to take you 3 years. And that's about right. 'Cause, you know, they're there for 4 years. So you get the seniors when you come in. that are sort of, and I felt like I was very good. Like we ordered new uniforms, but I very was like, what number did you have? Like I will size it to you. You know what I mean? Like I was very like conscious kind of about certain things. And they were great kids. Like they, it's hard. Like most of the bad kids don't survive me. If anybody tells you they didn't survive me, like it's because they didn't want to walk in the straight line. But it was definitely a different, like I said, a different culture, and it took time to sort of make it my own.
Well, and knowing you and Chris, right? Two completely different personalities, right? Chris is, if he was a college coach, he'd be called a player's coach, right?
Yeah.
Everybody loves him. He's happy-go-lucky, almost, now he's old enough to be a grandpa, so now, almost like a grandpa.
Yes.
But, lack discipline at times and some of the things. I played for him, so I can say that, which he will remind me that he wasn't a very good baseball coach, but he was a great softball coach, mainly due to talent.
Yeah.
But, so it was a change, right? So it was what I'm getting to. You were coming in, you were a little shocked to the system for some of the girls that were there, and obviously that was the adapting to the 3-year culture change.
Yes.
So adapting to what you do. I got you. So Larry never made it with you?
No, he was there for a little bit. I think he made it through the first fall. And then we butted heads, and he was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like, just, you know what you're doing now. Like, which I do think at some point you have to, not cut the ties, but let me grow, let me do my own thing and that kind of thing. My mom did stay and help with JV. So they got some Vicki Rogers in them, and then, like I said, they kind of stepped away as far as like just doing softball every day. I think my mom was right into going in retirement. And then he wasn't too far behind her, actually. So they stayed for a little bit, helped a little bit. I mean, got me on my feet kind of thing.
Right.
And again, I'm not oblivious to the fact that the West Nassau job and, the Rogers name had a lot to do with the hiring. So I think they stayed long enough to sort of like get me on my feet and going. But I had Mike Kelly there.
Right.
So, and David and Sheree Crosby were there, but Mike Kelly was the biggest thing. So I attribute a lot of my.
And was he on staff with Chris?
Yes.
Okay, so he was. So they're good. So there was a transition there. Somebody kind of.
Yeah, because Mike Kelly had a lot of girls. So no, Katie had already graduated. Katie that played at JU. Yeah. She had already graduated, and I had the middle one, Stacy, when I got there. So he was still there, but yeah, he was like a fixture of West Nassau because he has so many girls. Like the three of them. And so it took me a few years till Casey got there.
Right.
Kelly, the youngest one that played at St. Leo. So he stuck it out with me, and then he departed, or he kind of shows up now. I tell him we lose when he shows up. So like you need to call me before you come. But he stayed until Casey was done, and then he still helped a little bit, but he chased her around, quite a bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So of all the coaches that you played for or have coached with, who do you look at as mentors that have helped you shape who you are as a coach, and and what did you take from them?
I think when my time as an AD, because I did 6 years as athletic director at West Nassau, and I think it's not just, I guess, softball people that you learn from. So like I said, Coach Strong kind of took me under his wing when I first got there and was like, it takes 3 years. And we had Rand Coleman basketball, and I'm a huge Rand fan because Rand is such a culture person. And the way that he did things and just the way that he runs things and stuff, I was like, I still to this day, like I talk to him, like I'm a huge fan of how he handles things and coaches, and his mentality. And then, I have, Richard Pierce, who's now my principal, but was of course my AD at the time when I got there. And then he was an assistant principal, and he had been AD, and, so I still go to him, not just because he's principal, but because he's been there. And I say hey,
because he's old.
Right, he is old.
Yeah. Again,
you're
another
very
coach
old.
I played for.
Another one you played for.
Right.
See, small town here. But no, he's always been a big mentor to me and took me under his wing. And and he's not one of those that he doesn't have a problem telling me you probably maybe shouldn't do that, or I don't know if I'd advise that, or yeah, absolutely, I'll back you up. So, and I will say that at West Nassau, even when I had Mr. Booker was my first principal, and then I got Mr. Gauss. And then Mr. Snyder, and then Pierce, but all of them have been super supportive of like athletics and me in general, and just saying like
That's
it's
key.
Yes,
That's
very.
key at the high school level. I mean, you won't find a successful athletic program that doesn't have a sports-minded principal. Every
Right.
one of them.
Yeah, no, because when I was at Yulee, I don't necessarily feel like it was that way. And not, it was the principal, the assistant principal, Dr. Graham, he's another one. He's in St. Johns County now, but he was like the mentor thing. He has always been good to me and always mentored me, even as far as like the teaching and that kind of thing. So I definitely, it's not just softball coaches, you know what I mean? And then sometimes you have people that teach you how not to do things.
Sure.
I won't name those, but
Yeah.
you know, I mean, like just things that you just learn that, you know, doesn't work, or that's probably not how I would
Right.
handle that.
And it doesn't even have to be people you know, right? Some
No.
you can just learn the story. Learn
Yeah.
what happened and how they handled it, and not something. that
No,
you
so like I
wanna do.
said, thankfully I've had quite a few like very successful, like long-standing coaches. You know, and my dad to this day, like I'll call and my mom answers the phone. I'm like, I need Larry. Like,
Yeah.
call him, I need Larry. Put him on the phone, and I'm like, da da da, you know, this, and this, and he's like, oh yeah, well, you know, do that. You know, you can't let that happen, or you can't do this, or tell him this. You know, so I still call him
Right.
all the time.
Well, that's an unbelievable resource, and you know, for you being so unique, going straight from college to a head coach, and then at a premier program 3 years later, you know, but you were kind of an assistant coach your whole life.
Yes.
You know, living with those two and being with your dad, and hearing everything that goes on in the truck on the way home, on the way to games, and hearing those phone calls and conversations. You've really been a coach your whole life.
Yeah, no, I definitely, like I said, I got the other perspective from, and I have such a respect for coaches. Like even now with my kids, you know, I may not agree with like everything they do, but I feel like it's not just my kid. Like whatever's best for, you know, the 18 or the 20 or whatever you have, then like I'm gonna step back and stay out of the way. So you know, that's like my son just tried out for middle school basketball, and they made him the manager. And I think, you know, the coach had commented something about if I was upset. And one of the girls that was a coach under me at West Nassau is there now. And she was like, no, like, she's not like that at all. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, will be completely supportive of you and, like, how you run things and how you do things. Like, you'll never have a problem with her.
Yeah.
So.
Well, before we get into your
Okay.
families, I want to
Yes.
dive into that. We got to take a little break here.
Okay.
So we'll be right back with more after the game with Coach Randalyn Bryant.
Baker Sports is local sports. Uniforms from Pop Warner and Little League to travel ball, high school, and college. They make you look good. They help you play good. Baker Sports has been helping families make memories that will last a lifetime with their Baker's Buckets. We've got a lot of these filled with baseballs and softballs in the garage. I've been throwing batting practice to Ty and Kaylee for years, and also sit on the Baker's Bucket, catching Kaylee while she practices her pitching. Baker Sports is homegrown, and a lot of employees that used to play on local ball fields now work for Baker Sports, now helping you look good, play good, and make memories of your own. Visit Bakersport.com to see what Baker Sports can do for you. Custom apparel, Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, embroidery, screen printing, and more. Baker Sports is local sports from Jacksonville to anywhere in the Southeast. Bakersport.com. In high school coaching, a lot of the good stories come after the game. Sit back, watch, and listen to the journeys to the sideline and the stories of high school coaches. After the game, presented by Baker Sports and High School 912.
Welcome back to After the Game. Josh Baker here with Coach Randalyn Bryant, softball coach at West Nassau High School. And we've kind of been through how you got to where you are now. So how many years now has it been at West Nassau?
This is my 16th year, so 18th total.
Okay. So 16th year at West Nassau, 18th year total coaching. And, you know, we kind of got to you got to West Nassau part, kind of separated with your dad, starting to develop your own coaching style. But, you know, a couple years, let's say 3 or 4 years into that West Nassau run, you know, something life-changing happens, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so we've talked to all the football coaches, and, you know, when the kids come, they, you know, kind of the going theme with the guy is the male coaches, they get more efficient, right? They're no longer hanging out at the field house watching film. Now they got to get home because they got to do stuff with their kids. So you have your son, right? And how does that just change your whole world revolving around coaching?
You know, it's crazy because when I found out I was pregnant with Jackson, he was due January 8th, which was the start date for softball that year. And I just knew, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You'll learn that both the births of my children were not at the greatest times. But thankfully I had them on Christmas, so I had a few weeks, and I just I coached. I was on maternity leave technically, so I didn't go to work, during the day. So like the only time I had was like at practice. And Cherie Crosby, God love her, my assistant. She's my go-to for everything. She would get him every day when it was time for practice, and she calls him Monkey, like still every morning when he leaves for school. She's like, come here, Monkey, and he's almost 12.
Right.
And she would just love on him and take care of him, and I would go to practice. I didn't have a JV the first year. Like, we were kind of low on numbers, and I was like, I went, and they're real big on gender equity and stuff, and I'm like, can I please just do a varsity? Like, I just don't have,
Right.
and stuff. And they're like,
give
yeah,
me
that's
1
fine.
year.
Yeah, so we did it. And I admit, I think we made it. I think we were district runner-up that year, and we went to regionals. I'm not going to tell you it was our best year, but that's when I honestly, it was definitely like my third or fourth year there. So at that point, I had built the culture, and that's when that year when I had Jackson is when I started getting that freshman class that would eventually, play for a state championship. So I managed. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't hard, but like he's been drug around that park. I used to put a playpen in the dugout, and we'd do like rotations, and like a station was like take care of the kid,
Right.
which high school girls like.
That's right up their alley.
Yeah, they don't, and plus they get a break. Like,
Right.
yeah. This is like, no, it's my turn. It's my turn. You've already done it. So I'd put him in a playpen, and they would like rotate through and entertain him, and I would coach. And again, my parents were very like instrumental, and like Cherie, I'm like, are you going to the game? I would drive, take him. Cherie would take care of him, and those kind of things. So I wouldn't be able to do it. Like I know, like men, I guess, like you said, it changes there, but I would not have been able to do it without like my parents and my assistants. But they were wonderful, and the girls, all of them, with helping me.
Yeah.
And so they put up with him because he was still a little angel for a little bit. I mean, he's kind of sweet now, but he definitely, the other one's a lot worse than him, but he had his moments too where they were like, get your kid.
Right.
Get your kid.
And then Raiden was
2018, but if you remember the Raiden story, she was born while they were at the state championship. I was due towards the end of May, and that's the year that it just kept raining. Like I had scheduled I had a C-section, and I had scheduled it the week after the state finals. Not that, I always plan to get there. It doesn't ever work out that way, but that's just how we plan things. And it had rained and rained and rained, and they kept backing it up, and they kept backing it up, and they kept backing it up. And everybody's like, just like move your C-section date. And I'm like, but y'all don't understand. Like if I go down there and like I go into labor and I have to have this baby down there, like my parents are there. I'm like, but Buddy's parents like are not there. Right. And if something goes wrong, then I'm stuck in Vero Beach. I'm like, it's not like I was literally within days of supposed to be having a baby.
Right. Not to mention, I'm sure Buddy wasn't too.
I'll have to that story.
Yeah,
this is where
happy about you going down there.
No, and my dad saved the day on that one too, as far as going to the state thing. But so thankfully I went into labor a few days early on that weekend, but that was the whirlwind where we had graduation that Monday night. They left. I had a baby on Sunday. They had graduation on Monday night. They had to play Tuesday morning. They won. I had gotten out of the hospital. And so they were playing for the state championship on Wednesday, which was the day that I was actually scheduled for the C-section. Mm-hmm. And, they had let me out of the hospital. And so when they won in the semifinal game, and I was like, and Buddy was like, absolutely not. Like, we are not going down there. My dad's like, I'll drive. And I'm like, yes, get in the car. So like Buddy was not for it. But my dad 100% was like, I'll drive. And I didn't even tell the girls I was going. Like I didn't tell them anything. So when I loaded up and got there, hindsight, I probably should have stayed at home and just let them handle it. I don't remember most of the game. I remember some of it. I was like, like pain medicine, but, no. So we had Raiden. So Jackson was born, right before softball season, and she was literally born on the last day or, last few days of softball season. And again, it became a little tougher with two. But thankfully at that point, Jackson had kind of gotten into, VPK, and so he was a little more in daycare and stuff. And then when I had her, so by the time softball season came around, again, between my parents and Cherie and the girls, like we just managed, because she, like, you thought he was bad, like she's like Stillwell Angel like times 3. Like she is destroying everything. But again, if, it's like we surround, the people you surround yourself
Right.
with, and they were so good. And I had this one manager, she didn't play softball, but Kaylee Thompson was her name, and she like kept my life together. She was like, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? So she was just like I said, she never had played softball, but just kind of wanted to be around it. And she was like, do you need a manager? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she was a godsend. Like she literally, like I was like, I can't find this. And she's like, oh, it's in the diaper bag. Like she was like this little nanny that would like follow me around and help me so much.
Yeah.
So she was wonderful.
And you also had David constantly doing the field, right?
Oh gosh, David.
Yeah. I mean, so you did have that advantage over a lot of coaches.
I have never had to. I will tell you, like I have never had to. Not that I don't do field work, like I pull the weeds, like stuff. But I have always had, even when I was at Yulee, I had Jeff Colts and between my dad that did the field, and then when I got there, it was David. And David's not out there anymore. And so I have Mike Posey now that helps me. Yes, Posey. He gets to be the good cop, and I'm the bad cop.
Oh, yeah.
Like
he's good at that.
Yes, and so I have Posey, so he comes out and he helps, and it doesn't look any. It's still nice, but it's nothing like when David Crosby was there. That place was immaculate when David was there.
Yeah. Well, we got to get Posey to up his game a little bit.
Yeah, we need to talk to him because he's retired. We need to get him a Staten. That's the problem. He doesn't have he doesn't have an assistant. I need to work on that. But again, I just been blessed with wonderful assistants. As far as I think you're as successful as the people around you.
Right, yeah. I mean, it takes a village.
Yeah.
And that's certainly a village that's kind of built around and embraced the softball. I mean, going back to I remember in Little League, before travel ball, when the girls always won. Like, they always won the state championship in Little League, and here we were. We'd barely make it out of sectionals if we did. And then you go to high school, and it's the same thing. I mean, we're struggling to break 500, and they're,
I know. I'm very blessed. I've always said that. And like, not only with the players, but I have wonderful parents. You hear these horror stories about parents and like they make it miserable and they do this and that. One, I don't know if it's just they're scared of me, or I don't know, but I thankfully have had the best parents that are just kind of supportive. And I'm not going to tell you they've always agreed with me, but they've left me alone and let me coach. And I've never had, knock on wood, I've never had, like I said, a real issue where you hear like where it's like, well, no, I'm not doing this. Like they've always been super supportive, super helpful. And I don't know if, like I said, it's just the culture of just Callahan in general.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you grew up there, like
it's
it's a different place. You know what I mean? Like it really is. Yeah. And so I've been very blessed. And then, you have the Little League program, and now you have so many travel ball programs and stuff. And the best thing about it is they all, with Callahan being so small, like they all grow up together. You know what I mean? Like you very rarely have an outsider. You do have a few, but like for the most part, 90% of your team has known each other, played with each other, gone to every grade level. I mean, everything together. And that doesn't happen all like at a lot of bigger schools. Like they have feeder schools that come in. But my kids are, from the very beginning, like all the way up.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So what is the feeder program right now? I mean, growing up for me, like I said, it was all local girls. It was all Callahan Little League, and they just funneled right to the high school. How has the travel ball world changed that in Callahan?
Yeah, thankfully. So, they kind of all scatter. So I got out of the travel ball world like when I had kids. I'm like, I've got to have some time off. Like I've got, to be a mom. And so some of them have kind of here and there, but, back to Posey. Right now we have the Tampa Mustangs that run out of our crew, which is a big time travel ball. And they had changed over a few years ago. And so I have several that play. Like I have probably, I have to count them, 5, 6, 7 on the same team with travel ball. And then I do have a couple, my shortstops at a different place. And then the 2 that I had graduated last year that were extremely good, Reese and Sid, like they played like on national teams, so they like had moved up. But I think there's just so much opportunity, and that's what I try to explain. Like again, back to the AD perspective, like we've talked about basketball and volleyball, not being as successful, the girls thing, because it's not offered, the same amount that softball is offered is in Callahan. I mean, like a volleyball program, there's not, like she started one now, but they never touch a volleyball until they're in 6th grade. You know what I mean? So it's hard to compete with people that have been playing for so long. So they do, I mean, I'd say probably 95% of my kids play travel ball.
Right.
Which is good too, because like I said, they get kind of different perspectives, and it's not always like just me, but there's the pros and the cons of travel ball.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I feel like I have to remind them every year, and we get on this, like, every game we play, like, counts towards, like, regional rankings. This isn't travel ball. It's not like if you lose at 8, like, you just, you'll play again in a little while. Like, it doesn't work that way.
Well, I like to say travel sports at the high school level are the individual version of a team sport.
Yeah.
So like travel softball. I am there ultimately, hopefully to get better, play good competition, get better. But ultimately, I'm there to try to get showcased to go play college ball.
Right.
So it's an individual sport, whereas the high school piece is the straight team sport.
Well, and it's not as competitive. Like, I know they say that, but, like, you don't, when I'm coaching, like, I'm trying to get an extra base. I'm trying to bunt. Like, I'm trying to, a sack fly. Like, I'm trying to do these things, and they just don't do that in the showcasing. Like, they don't bunt.
Maybe more talented, but less competitive.
Right, because it's kind of one of those things, like, when you go into showcase, it's like, you're going to play here for 2 innings, you're going to play here for 2 innings, you're going to play here. And I, in high school, it's like, I don't owe you anything. Like, you may never play.
Right.
I don't owe you any innings. Like, there's no must play rule. So you have to compete, you know what I mean? Like, and also you have to perform. And if you're not performing, like, I'm going to replace you with the next one behind you.
So kind of piggyback on what you're saying there. So I've always thought some of the success of your program and that West Nassau program has been you can keep the local girls. You keep local talent. Whereas, a lot of public schools, especially rural public schools, the talent leaves. They go to private, right? They come, look at West Nassau football. They're having a great year. But if you look around Jacksonville, the private schools, there's probably 12 to 15 boys that could, zone-wise, be playing at West Nassau.
For sure.
But you're able to keep those girls there. Is it just the culture and the history of the program?
I think it's the culture. Well, I'll say one, nobody wants to drive from Callahan to anywhere else. But I will say that, I mean, just the culture, but, like, there's really no reason to go anywhere else. You know what I mean? We can compete with anybody. So if you're going somewhere else, it's because you don't want to compete where you're at. You know what I mean? Because there's no reason, like, we're just as competitive as anybody. I mean, like, he wrote the article last year about that we had the highest strength of schedule at one point in the state, like, or around, because we play people. I mean, I'm not shying away from anybody. We may get beat by 100, but we're going to go play. And so there's really no reason to, go anywhere. And I think it's the culture, but I think it's the small town, like, just kind of pride thing. And I'm not taking that away from football, but I'll say that, high school football, well, I'll give them this. Like, high school football is where you get recruited 100%. You know what I mean? Like, that's where all your film is, where everything comes from. Like, you don't just go down the street and play, like, a pickup game of football, like softball. Like, hey, I want to play this weekend. Is anybody? It just doesn't work that way with football. So, with softball, like, the recruiting is done so much in the summer and so much in the fall that they don't really need... You know what I mean? Like, it's
Absolutely.
more about playing, like...
The people they want to go play for are playing.
Yeah.
They don't have time to recruit you because they're playing. They're trying to win games themselves.
Yeah. So they play, like, they go for more, like, where I want to go to school or my friends, or, like I said, it is the culture. I mean, I've had several. I got criticized the first year in 15 when we played for a state championship because I had 2 that had come from Yulee and 1 from Hilliard. So, I had 3 kids on my team. But
they're coming in. They're not leaving.
Right. But in Nassau County, you're allowed to... I mean, there's some specifications, but you're allowed to go to any high school that you want as long as you provide your transportation. And so these kids were competitive softball players. They all signed and played in college. You know what I mean? So that was the level they were trying to, like, compete at. So I think, when people have the means and kind of stuff and they want to be competitive, West Nassau, I mean, it's like, if you want to cheer in Nassau County, West Nassau is the place to be.
Right.
So I think the people
good players want to play with good players.
Right. And if you don't, like, you can go be the star somewhere else. That's fine. But you know what I mean? Like, here we're going to compete and you're going to play and you're going to earn your spot. And that's just how it is.
You just hit on something that I've got here on my list. So if you don't want to be here and you want to go be the star somewhere else, go. I think that your program, and I want to ask you, is it because of girls? You're dealing with the girls, or is it the culture of the program? Like, boys, you have a hard time having 2 really good shortstops and convincing one of them to go play second base. But at your place, I don't see girls leaving.
No, and I will say I'm very big on the team thing. Like, I am a huge, like, be a good teammate, be a great teammate person, like, always. And, I want to give props because Reese Green, who's playing at Troy now, and arguably top 3 that I've ever coached as far as ability. She played shortstop for me. Well, then I had Tegan Harder as a freshman come in last year. And in my opinion, Reese is a better outfielder. She's currently playing second base at Troy, but I think she's a better outfielder than she is infielder. And so last year, it was like, I need you to go to center field. And Reese was like, okay, I mean, that's fine.
Right.
And it was kind of like, well, I mean, like, you're going to move short. And I'm like, we are better with her in center field. Like, I can move Reese into shortstop and we'll be perfect. You know what I mean? Like, she's a stud. But then, like, where do I put Tegan? You know what I mean? Like, where do I put, like, the best fit is to here.
Right. Well, this
and
is
like,
the lineup that's best for the
right.
team.
And this is where I need you. And, like, never, like, a stutter from Reese, never anything. And she actually had to come in and play second a few times. Like with the injury or something would happen, I have to move, like she'd slide in and play second for me. But I think she's honestly probably top 3 ability that I've ever coached.
Right.
You know what I mean? And she's playing Division I softball successfully, and she didn't argue for a second. You know what I mean? It was like, yeah, whatever you need me to do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, there was the year where I had Skylar Whitty and Ariel McCullough, and they would switch all playing first and stuff. Well, when it came for Player of the Year, I wanted them to split it. Like I told the paper, I want them to split it. And she's like, well, I'm like, well, they really kind of have the same numbers. Like Skylar has more innings than Ariel, but the numbers are about the same. I said, but we're better when Skylar pitches and Ariel plays first, like defensively. And I'm like, and she accepted that. Like Ariel was like, and by the way, just to add, Ariel McCullough had pitched in the state championship game the year before. And when she came back, I mean, she pitched us all the way there. When she came back, I was like, I need you to play first. Like, we're better when you play first and this. And she was like, yes, ma'am. Like, whatever you need me to do. So, I'm very big, and I always like make an effort. I don't know if you ever see my posts and stuff. Like, if you have a sacrifice bunt, like that's as big to me as, an RBI double. Like, I'm very big on, like, thank you for doing this, like this, and just making it a team thing and kind of pointing out the kids that aren't always the superstars, but, are around, like, they practice just as hard as everybody else. So it is a culture thing, and I do make a constant effort to, like, be a good teammate, be a great teammate. You know what I mean? Like, even you superstars, I don't treat them like superstars, but even you superstars, like, need to remember these things. And I create leaders, and I can't tell you how, like, blessed, like, I've been with just really, really, really good kids that want the best for, like, everybody. Not, like, they're not selfish. And so I think that's part of just being successful, is not having the selfish kids. So I can't take all the credit for it. Like, I'm going to give their parents some credit. But like, there's a certain way I work. And if we're better with you at first, or we're better with you in center field, like, that's what's going to happen.
Right. Because it's very interesting to me when I look at it, because it's a program, we've had Mike Pickett on the show, St. John's girls soccer, and he's private school, so he gets girls in, but year after year after year after year, he just wins. And similar to what you've done at a public school, but it's not like when tryouts come around, you have 80 girls come try out.
No.
I mean, so it's a cool factor to be part of the West Nassau softball program, but only really for the softball girls.
Yeah.
You're not just, it's not like they're staying at West Nassau just to be part of the team. They're coming to be good and develop.
And I kind of try to create an experience for them. We travel a lot. We do the Kissimmee thing every year. We stay in a big house. Like, we go play down. We were playing Palaca. We're playing, I think it's Matanzas this year. We go stay at the Parents Lake House.
Mm-hmm.
I spend a lot of time on the culture and this is West Nassau softball. And I spend a lot of time on, this is a reputation we have. That's the speech they always get, that I've worked a long time to build this reputation and to build this culture. And, like, you can either get on board or you can not play, but you're not going to wear this West Nassau softball shirt and not be rowing the same direction we are.
Right. And we talk about softball, right? Because that's what we're here for, Coach's Show. But it's more about, or as much, if not more, about building the girl, right? Mm-hmm. Building the young lady. And the stuff that maybe our society's forgotten about in a lot of places, not really Callahan, but still spending that time with them to help them grow as a person.
Yeah, and I pride myself on creating leaders. That's my biggest thing with captains and leaders. And, there's a story, and it's funny because it's in the yearbook, and most parents would never let this fly. But it was the year... I know Skylar was on the team, so at some point that Skylar Woody was in there. So sometime between that 2015, 2018 thing, they just were not playing well. Like, they just were not competing. They were not anything. So I went and had shirts made that were plain black that just had numbers on them. And I was like, you won't wear anything Warrior softball until you do what you're supposed to do. You compete, you act right, and you act like this is Warrior softball. Like, you will wear those blank black shirts with just numbers. And they were like, so I did. They wore them. Like, the pictures are in the yearbook, and they have just these plain black shirts on. And there's one from Fernandina. I think Skylar might have thrown a perfect game or something. We went over there. Or I know she threw a no-hitter. And there's the picture, and she's like holding the thing. And I remember like one of the seniors coming up to me. She might have been a junior, Bree, but she was like, we're going into Creekside. They were undefeated. I think we were undefeated. It was like a big thing. I say they weren't playing well, but we obviously were winning, but they still were not playing where I thought they should be.
Right, up to standard.
Yeah, and she's like, can we please like wear our uniforms? Like, this is so embarrassing. Like, we've won. Like, we've learned our lesson. And I was like, I want them all back. Like, I'm boxing them up. And so they bought, like, at the end of the year, they organized everything. And there's like a box that says trouble shirts. And that's like the shirts in them. But I just look back now and I think, like, how many teams or coaches or parents like could get away with that? Like, you know what I mean? Right. Most parents would be like, oh, well, you're not taking my kid's jersey. Like, I paid for that jersey. I'm not doing this. I'm not, you know, but the parents didn't say a word. Like, but they did. I wouldn't let them wear a hat that said West. I wouldn't let them anything. They couldn't wear anything that said West Nassau softball. I was like, until you act right and you do what you're supposed to do. So again, I've been blessed with great parents and a great culture.
And normally I ask coaches, you know, that have been coaching for a longer time, like, how much has things changed from when you started to where you are now? But I don't think they've changed a whole lot with you, have they? I mean,
they've changed some, and we get back to my dad, you know, because he likes to not coach or help me, but he wants to coach from the on-deck circle. So, like, I'll either walk by or he's at the back of the dugout. And most of the time, he won't come talk to me during the game. He gets, like, my assistant. Like, you know, it used to be Bubba or it used to be Posey, right? Like, hey, come here real quick. And, like, he'll tell them, like, you know, he won't say it to me, but he'll tell them. Or when he does talk to me, he's like, you know, a good coach, like, wouldn't do this. Like, a good coach, you know, wouldn't. And I'm like, what? Am I a great coach? Am I a bad coach? Like, what? You say good. Like, where do I stand? But he always gives me a hard time about things. And I, you know, because they're silly now. Like, the girls are silly. You know what I mean? Like, and they make TikToks and this dancing thing and this music and these walk-up songs. And, like, I can live without all. Like, I don't need any of it. Like, just, can we just play softball? And Dad's like, I you know, this and that. And I'm like, Dad, just let them be kids. You know what I mean? Like, they know, like, when to flip the switch and not. And I think that's kind of what I've learned is, you know, because I was very strict about certain things and very this, but, like, I do let them, like, there's a time and a place, and there's times when I let it, you know, cut up and y'all can play around, and there's other times, like, it's time.
Switch,
yeah, it's time. Yeah. But yeah, so, and he says all that stuff, but he loves it. Like, he stayed, you know, Sid English was my catcher for 4 years. The best leader I've ever had, ever. I get, like, teary-eyed thinking about it. Like, she's just one of those kids. And so he would use her a lot, like, Sid, come here. Like, and he'd tell Sid. So, like, he kind of channels it through it. Right. But, you know, I'm like, Dad, just let them be kids. Like, you know, I think sometimes I do expect a lot of them. I expect you to be responsible. I expect you to be where you're supposed to be, act how you're supposed to act. But, like, I do, like, let them cut loose sometimes. And he's kind of old school when it comes to that stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
Well, we got to wrap up. We're running out of time. It's been a blast. But one question I got to ask you, we ask every coach before you leave, is if you could, knowing everything you know now, if you could go back and tell first-year head coach at 21 years old, that at that time, Coach Rogers, one piece of advice, what would you give yourself? One
piece of advice. I think probably at just the end of the day, and I've gotten there from then, is not as much about, like, the winning, but, and it's the same as teaching, but the relationships, like, with the kids. But if they know you care and, like, they know that you put, like, they will run through a wall for you, you know. And I always tell them I am the first person to criticize you or the first person to get on you, but I will be the first person out of the dugout to give you a high five. So I think just obviously, like, learning and growing and, you know, just realizing they're kids and, like, they do sometimes make mistakes. I think probably when I first started, I was not as forgiving on some things. Kind of like if you made a mistake, like, you know, not like a physical error, but like not acting right or not doing right. And I've gotten, I don't say more lenient, but I'm more forgiving. Like, okay, this happened. Yes, this is all right. This happened, but these are the consequences. You know, where before I was kind of like, write you off. Yeah. So I've gotten more to understand. And I think too, like when you have, they say I've gotten soft. Like when you have your own kids, like. Your whole perspective changes. Sure. So 21-year-old Randalyn, like, didn't get it. But now that I have my own kids.
Right. You know what mistakes they make on a daily basis.
Yeah, like perspectives definitely change. And, you know, that's my baby. And sometimes and I expect everything from my personal kids. But I definitely think I have softened up as far as that goes.
Are you going to make it till Raiden gets there?
My goal, class of 2036. Yeah, I got a whole little like T-ball softball team. Like I've got them picked out. I will say, Lily Urbina, she graduated 2 years ago. She's playing in college. I have the sister now, and then there's another one, and then there's one Raiden's age. So I have a Urbina from now until
replace the Kellys with
Urbina.
Urbina.
Until 2036. So I always kind of joke, like I've got till 2036. I think I can make it. And I have the little team. We started with T-ball last year. I got some little athletes. Some of them want to do that cheerleading stuff, and I have to it's time to come. You're too.
That's your competition. In
the
cheer squad.
Yeah, because they're so athletic. Also, like I can't even say they're so they are phenomenal athletes. Like these cheerleaders, and that's the big thing. And I'm just like, no, don't go to that side because I know if you leave, that's a full-time job.
I don't know what it is in the water out there.
It is a full-time
boys
job.
Slow and unathletic, and the girls athletes.
They're just so athletic. Well,
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a blast. Good luck this spring, and we'll be cheering for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get local sports on demand with Action Sports Shacks 24/7. All sports, all local, all the time. From the locker room to the field, the Jacks, high school football, the Jacksonville Armada, and don't forget the Brett and Austin Show. They're all in on Trevor. Of course. Download the Action News Jacks Now app, available wherever you stream or at actionnewsjacks.com. TV, phone, laptop, desktop. Action Sports Shacks 24/7. Jacksonville sports all the time.